Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of TBR. And I'm George Binns. And we're going to have with us this evening our state representative, Hannah Bowen, to tell us about what's going on downtown. Yeah. And I guess the first thing is really not so much downtown, but around the neighborhood. Had a discussion with Senator Lovely about a month ago, and she ended up discussing that you somehow or other got involved with balancing the resources of the food pantries. And this was in the time when SNAP was up in the air, didn't know where the money was coming from, so a lot of people weren't getting their semi-annual or donation from the government. So the food pantries were really strapped. And I guess what the issue came down to is some food pantries had excess of one thing, but nothing of the other. And you got into the act of balancing them. How does that work?
Sort of, yeah. So it was great to work with Senator Lovely and her team on this. But yeah, we started hearing middle of October that the Trump administration was thinking of holding off on sending out SNAP benefits to people who receive them monthly as of November 1st if the government shutdown continued past that date. And that is not something the federal government has done before. There were reserve funds in place to cover that kind of eventuality. They decided not to use them. And so I started just asking around the local social service agencies to say, how do you think this is going to impact people in Beverly? Are we ready? What can I do to help? And so most of the food pantry and community meals providers were already seeing, like the last couple of weeks of October, people starting to show up who hadn't been there before or hadn't been in a long time, preemptively knowing that they might not get the supplemental benefits that they were used to and relying on. And it's about 10% of Beverly residents, about 4,500 people who qualify for SNAP benefits.
Wow, that's a big
a lot of people don't realize the eligibility. It's mostly seniors, people with disabilities, and working families who are just trying to make ends meet and need that additional supplement to be able to keep food on the table for their kids. And so it's people who either are working and despite working multiple jobs and managing childcare aren't earning enough to have that stability, or people who are unable to work and their other sources of income don't quite cover their full costs. So it's a relatively small benefit for each recipient, but it adds up to a lot because there are a lot of people.
Well, they're in serious trouble. They need everything they can get.
Exactly, yeah. And it's tough because it's a benefit that you can use at most grocery stores, at farmers markets, at convenience stores to buy food. There are restrictions on how it can be used, but it's essentially works as a cash benefit. So you get a benefits card, you can use that at the store, you have money to spend directly on food. If that goes away, and that's where a part of your food budget is coming from, you have to use either cash or go to a food pantry, go to a community meal to try and make up that difference. And most people who qualify for SNAP benefits are also stretched for their housing costs, their electric bill, for everything. So there isn't cash lying around to make up that difference. So just sort of heard, yes, this is already an issue. People are worried. They didn't have time, individuals didn't have time to make a plan. Where am I going to get an extra couple $100s for next month? People can't change their work shifts that fast or anything. So thankfully, in Beverly and Wenham, we have a whole network of organizations that provide some of that additional safety net as neighbors need additional resources. So Beverly Bootstraps is sort of the core anchor for our area, and they have a food pantry that really did start to see more and more activity even over the summer, as a lot of other economic factors have been sort of crunching people's budgets, and did see it start to peak in October and the beginning of November. They're part of a great network through the Greater Boston Food Bank, to the Salem Pantry, to Beverly Bootstraps, and with local donors. So they were able to say, yeah, we're ready for more people to come in, and we want people to know that we're here, and that even if typically they're able to meet all their food needs using SNAP, going to the grocery store with their usual habits, they're welcome here. There will be food available. And then our community meals programs. So every night of the week, there is a volunteer group somewhere in the city of Beverly that provides a free meal to whoever comes in the door. So they're all downtown. It's mostly church groups and volunteer groups, and it's a rotating schedule. Beverly Bootstraps posts that schedule, but it's individual groups who provide those meals. Sometimes they're from local restaurants donated. We have some really generous small businesses that do that. People cooking in their homes, people cooking in the kitchens and in church basements. And they were all also seeing new faces and increased need. And because they're a little bit more ad hoc, it was really helpful to get everybody together. So we were able to get everybody on the phone. We did 3 or 4 weekly calls from that kind of end of October, preparing for the November 1st date and the first couple weeks of November until benefits started flowing again. And, I think the last call that we did, that network was saying, okay, we haven't seen a steep drop off. We're sort of back to steady, but are ready and are connected. And I think they're all worried, but ready for what will happen in the next few months as people start to lose some of the supports for healthcare coverage, start to just see the pressure. So, they're ready to fill that gap. But it was great because it's a network of people and organizations that all know about each other and sometimes work together. But we were able to pull everybody together and really create that structure.
Was it just limited to Wenham and Beverly?
Yeah, so I just pulled together folks in our district. So, a lot of city staff were on those calls and helped coordinate from the mayor's office, the Council on Aging. Okay. The Beverly Housing Authority was great because a lot of their residents also qualify for SNAP or other programs. So they were able to get information out, get information in. The Green Beverly team participated. You might not think of them as like food security folks, but they help with collecting food from restaurants, grocery stores that's still usable, but that they're not going to sell, and sort of prevent food waste. So they come at it from a waste reduction standpoint. And they're able to get that food to the community meals nights and to the food pantries and increase that capacity. Folks from the Salem Pantry were part of it, Senator Lovely's office, the Accord Food Pantry that serves Hamilton and Wenham and a little beyond. So it really was a great network. And the Essex County Community Foundation hosted us in person. They have a great conference room in the Cummings Center and helped facilitate some funding to boost the capacity in all these organizations. So everybody was eager to work together, and all we did as an office was, schedule the calls, share what information we were getting.
To organize it to make sure that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot of good ideas, but until somebody ties it all together, it just languishes there.
Yeah, and then the last piece of it was we did a meeting actually at the BevCam downtown studio and broadcast it, thanks to the BevCam team, to just report out what everyone was hearing and doing and really encourage people with 2 things. One, if someone who qualifies for SNAP benefits was going to be impacted those first couple of weeks of November, and at that point we didn't know how long it might be, that this is where help is available, and please use it. That's what these resources are for. And a lot of people were reaching out to see how they could help too, because a lot of people, you may not know that your neighbor all across the city might be on SNAP benefits. And so people didn't quite know how to help each other best. So
they don't know who to help.
Exactly. So we were able to say, here are all the groups that are organized, mobilized, and ready to support. You can donate. You can So there were a lot of efforts across the city to do food drives, to raise money. So that put all the organizations in a decent spot. And I think now part of the challenge is how do we sustain some of that into what's probably going to be a hard winter overall.
Yeah. So it's an ongoing project. Yeah.
Yep.
Getting back to the downtown
Yeah.
section, there's been a lot of talk about this year the budget is going to be passed before it runs out.
It's the goal.
And I think Senator Levy again mentioned that, and I think you mentioned it too, that the rules have been changed that everybody has to have your bills heard by the first week in December.
Yep.
And here we are beyond that point. So did that happen, I guess?
Yeah, for the most part it did. There's always a few things that get filed late, but the committees I'm on, we had full hearing schedules through the summer and the fall and have either voted on the bills that we heard or requested extensions for them. So some of the bills that require a little more work, like the bill on rent stabilization is in the Housing Committee, that one's been extended. A number of things. If there was anything still pending, there is a process to extend it, but that gives the whole body a chance to vote on, like, can it be extended or not?
Yeah.
But otherwise, a lot has moved. So I was really excited to see the bill that I filed with Rep. Cruz over in Salem that would support it. It went to the Housing Committee because it supports people who are on Section 8 vouchers. So federal assistance to help pay a portion of their rent would help people build savings while they're sort of working in that process. Because every time your income goes up, the portion you pay to rent goes up. And this would carve out a piece of that to build savings for folks. They have an opportunity to actually sort of graduate from or move out of assistance for their housing. And that we were voted on in committee 2 weeks ago and is moving forward. So
Good.
Yeah.
So things are happening.
Yeah, a lot is moving.
Yeah. And I guess the other concern a lot of people have is here in Beverly, the word has finally come out that next year the budget is going to be at least $4 million short of what Prop 2.5 will produce.
Yeah.
And the state is not in that great a shape that it can make up that kind of difference.
Right.
For all the towns are going to be struggling for lots of reasons.
Yep.
And I guess the governor has proposed a couple of different tax programs. One of them is a change in the limits that cities can charge for excise tax and meals tax. And I don't know what else they've got involved.
Yeah.
And where's that going, or is that going at all?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of things happening around that challenge that the amount of property taxes communities can collect being limited by Prop 2.5 unless you pass an override. It's sort of, there's a higher bar to go beyond a 2.5% increase. And the rapidly rising cost of doing business for municipal governments, this mismatch, and as you say, it's going to be a challenging budget year for the state as well. There's a bunch of ideas on the table. So, oops, I'm dropping my microphone. Hopefully that has not knocked out my voice. So there's a few, and these are part of the set of bills that have been extended. So the work on them will happen January and onwards.
Yeah, so that's not an easy one.
Yeah, there's more work to do. So there's a proposal specifically for the city of Boston that's getting a lot of attention, but that Beverly has thought about in the past, where so you can increase the total you're going to collect from property taxes within the constraints of Prop 2.5, but then you can distribute between residential property owners and commercial and industrial property owners. And every year, the city council and mayor have to determine if you're going to split the rate, and if so, by how much. So you can shift some of the tax burden from like what the proportional values of those two categories are to be a little more or less. We've been at the maximum shift for many years now. Boston has as well, and it's because residential property values are going up really fast, and commercial property values are just kind of hanging out or declining in some cases. So actual tax bills for commercial property owners in some cases are going down, like they're paying fewer dollars.
Yeah.
Let alone, not even accounting for inflation, like their actual tax bill is decreasing, while residential property owners are seeing their individual property tax bill go up way more than 2.5%. So there's a proposal for being able to change that shift and put more of the increase onto commercial and industrial property owners. There's challenges with that, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some other proposals to limit how much an individual's property tax can go up in any given year. And then the other pieces that you mentioned are part of the Municipal Empowerment Act, and they would allow cities and towns to choose. They wouldn't mandate it, but it would be an option for communities that currently can't raise other types of revenues beyond a certain point to be able to do that. So there's a proposal that cities could collect a larger local meals and lodging tax. So Beverly has adopted the local option meals tax. Mm-hmm. So on your check at any local restaurant, there's now I want to get it right. So there's a 6.25% state tax and a 0.75% local tax that comes to the city.
Yeah.
And we'd be able to increase that to 1%. So pretty small, but adds up, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then on the lodging, which, you figure lodging taxes, we're collecting money from people who are visiting Beverly, not Beverly residents, would increase the local portion from 6% to 7%. So there's small changes, but that could be, decent. And as we get more visitors and have more of a thriving downtown, we could get some meaningful money in that way and relieve a little bit of the pressure from the property tax collection. The other piece that I've heard more about from residents is the local option to increase the motor vehicle excise tax collected. So there's a portion that goes to the state, and we could add a surcharge that comes to the city specifically. The city sends out those bills and collects it, but it's limited in what actually comes back to the city. So some does, and we'd be able to increase how much we charge there.
The other thing I picked up on is, I guess, is some recommendations by Massachusetts Association of Home Builders or something like that wants to increase the Prop 2.5 limit to something higher.
Yeah, that's also been discussed.
Is that a serious one, or is that actually a bill, or is that just a conjecture?
That one is more conjecture than I think there's a lot more energy around these other proposals. Yeah. But it's tricky because I think in practice, a lot of communities think of Prop 2.5 as a hard cap. Yeah. And really, it's just a higher bar that the community as a whole has to agree to raise taxes beyond that amount. And a lot of communities have been passing overrides or debt exclusions or other ways to fund what's needed the last few years, just because of the pace of inflation and everything else. So, I think there are arguments for and against, but at the end of the day, it's not a hard cap. So it just falls on communities to do that work of justifying whether increasing taxes is needed or not to provide the services they want. And then it goes to the community to say, yes, we want a robust fire department and a robust police department and a robust school system, and this is what it's going to cost for that, or we're willing to cut back on those things in order to pay a little bit less in taxes.
Yeah, so that's the battle that homeowners face, that when they run into tight money problems, you can't get any more money because, like we mentioned with the meals situation, that on short notice you can't get any extra hours or whatever, or your working salary and that's it.
Yeah.
So you have to start cutting back. Something's got to give.
Yep.
So that's the other half of the game that's going to be kind of hard to sell.
Yeah. And part of the Municipal Empowerment Act would also make it easier for cities and towns to save money in other ways. It has some recommendations on procurement reform and things like that. So actually like helping save money, and would allow some further exemptions for or expansion of tax abatements and exemptions for seniors or other folks that would be impacted by any property tax increases.
The other thing that keeps coming up is increase in the services you get for electricity and gas. And I guess there's a pushback from the governor that doesn't want to give the gas company the increase they're claiming they need to cover their costs, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's several other these revenue sources that are being challenged as to where are you going to get the money from to do the things you've been legislated to do. And I think part of the problem with the gas company situation is after they had the explosion a couple of years back when the pipeline blew up, or one of the valves on the pipeline blew up, and really devastated a neighborhood just north of us here.
Yeah.
And it got to be a real campaign to, okay, we got to dig up the roads and clean up the system. And at the same time, the governor's pushing the idea that, well, Massachusetts needs more situation where we can use the electricity for one of these AI centers or data centers. And as the price of electricity goes up, it makes that kind of a increase in the opportunities within the state less positive. You can't have everything, kind of thing. And what seems to be talked up a lot now is people are moving out of the state. Businesses are moving out of the state. And right now, I think Massachusetts...
Some are, and the fear, I think that, for example, increasing the surtax on high-income earners would drive people out of state hasn't come true. We're collecting more in that revenue, and it's going towards roads and sidewalks and the MBTA and schools. I think there's a balance to strike, and we're definitely going to be taking up energy affordability legislation early in the new year. So I've already been in touch with the Clean Energy Advisory Committee. They've had some great ideas. I'd encourage anybody who has thoughts on both the sort of energy efficiency and shift to clean energy and overall energy affordability to reach out, because we're going to be tackling it as a legislature soon. It came up in November, has been sort of tabled for some more work to be done and different pieces of legislation to be split out, but expecting that to come up sooner than later. And then, I'll be on a call on Monday about National Grid's kicking off a request to the Department of Public Utilities to increase their rates significantly, 10% on your bill. And you're right, it's this tough balance of, they say that's what it's going to cost to deliver reliable electricity. The question is how much of that is like padding in additional costs and profits for a company, and how much can we all afford that? And we certainly want a safe and reliable electric grid and gas infrastructure, and there need to be limits on how it's funded and how the decisions are made about which things to repair so they're safe versus totally rebuild, which is incredibly expensive, and how those decisions get made. So I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on that proposal, and I just got the email 2 days ago maybe saying there's going to be a legislative briefing, started the conversation, and there will be a public comment period once that comes out. So I'll encourage people to get involved and think about making sure that our interests are part of that conversation.
One of the things that is curious about utility bills is the cost of delivering the service is getting to be more than the cost of the actual electricity or gas you're burning. And it gets to be a question of, what are all these things on there? and why are they there, kind of thing.
And the largest one really is the company is choosing to invest in infrastructure in the way that best benefits the company as well as serving ratepayers. So the biggest chunk of those delivery charges is things like replacing gas mains, which you certainly want repairs and maintenance. We don't want gas leaks because that's a climate challenge and a health challenge and also a safety concern. But, the National Grid came before the City Council several times in the last few years to lay expanded gas pipes at a time when we're not going to be doing away with gas entirely anytime soon, but not trying to add more and actually trying to scale back. And when we asked sort of, is this really necessary? Does this align with our city's goals, with our broader climate goals? Like, they withdrew applications after being questioned. So I think, it's important that we always ask those questions and don't just accept that the most expensive way to lay what will soon be obsolete infrastructure is needed. And so I'm hoping that's what the DPU process is going to provide as well, a chance to ask those questions.
That gets to be another long discussion of how much longer are we going to depend on gas, because one of my other pet projects is nuclear power, and it's one of those issues that it goes nowhere in this country. And
there's lots of concerns about it, and I think there's a growing interest in the state to look at all the potential options. And unfortunately, some of the options we've been counting on are stalling out because of federal government actions, like the wind power that's factored into our projections of how we're going to meet our energy needs in Massachusetts. Even in Salem, the projections of the impact on the local economy of having the port in Salem to support the wind industry, the offshore wind industry, that's all on hold now while we just wait to see how court cases go and whether the federal government will get back on board with projects that are like ready to go and are very much needed and will provide more stable and cost-effective energy that's also meeting our climate goals. So it's frustrating to see some of the options be pulled from the table right when we need them. But I think therefore people are looking all around to say, well, what else can we do to meet those needs?
Well, it's been an interesting half hour, and we're getting down to the point of you're going to run again.
Yes.
So wish you luck.
2026 is an election year already.
That was a short tour and back to work.
No. So, but I'm enjoying it so far and really finding lots of different ways to, from this seat, help facilitate programs in the community that we need. So.
Yep. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching us this evening. And if you've got any questions you want to bring up, please send me an email. Or if you've got a bigger statement to make, there's room for you here at the table. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned. We'll be back.